everyone, thanks for joining us in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Molly O'Brien. This is Brad Wetherbee, a shark researcher at the University of Rhode Island. Brad, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
So you have been researching and studying mako sharks since 2004, and recently, along with colleagues, you've published a paper in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society B, documenting the research on the mortality of mako sharks. So wanted to bring you in and talk a little bit about the work that you've been doing over the years and a little bit about this. So tell me what you've been doing.
Well, mako sharks are a very popular shark. They're a big game fish, so they put up a fight. When you catch them, they jump out of the water spectacularly sometimes. They're good to eat, and so there's a lot of people all over the world, including New England and Rhode Island, that fish for mako sharks. And so we've been tracking their movements with using satellite transmitters. And what we found was that we had a surprisingly large number of our sharks that had transmitters that were caught and killed in different fisheries in Canada and Mexico and in the US and even in Spain and some other places.
Wow.
And so we started wondering how much of the population was being caught, because it's something that they take into consideration when they're managing the populations. And so that was what our study was about, was estimating the mortality that results from fishing. You know, there's some that die naturally, but the whole goal of fisheries management, what everybody wants, is for the population to be stable and sustainable, so that the population is not going down. It's fine if it's going up, but there aren't more sharks being taken than are being replaced through their reproduction. Because if that's happening, then the population is going to decline and people aren't going to be able to go and catch mako sharks. And as I said, it's very popular, so nobody wants to hear about mako sharks from your grandparents. You know, oh, there used to be these sharks out there that were spectacular fighters and everything. We want their populations to remain stable enough so that people can fish for them for a long time.
Exactly. And so what did you find when you were going and seeing this? What's some of the data, what's some of the numbers that you found as opposed to what was already out there?
Well, what we found was that about 30% of the sharks that we had tagged and that we were following around through these satellite transmitters were caught, which is, it's almost a third of the population if you make that leap to how many sharks there are versus how many are being caught, which is a really high number, and it was about 10 times higher than the estimate that they were using to manage the populations.
Wow. So
since then, partly as a result of our research and some recalculation of other numbers, then in a stock assessment that they just did, status of the mako shark populations in the North Atlantic, they've estimated that they're being overfished now, and that
they changed.
Yeah, they've come up with a new stock assessment. Just 5 years ago, the assessment was that they weren't being overfished, which surprised a lot of people. But so they've redone that, and part of it was based on our work.
Wow. So that's pretty, how does that make you feel? If that was kind of the point of the research, right?
Well, yeah, it's rewarding. We aren't trying to shut down any fishing, and we're not so pro-conservation. We just want the marine resources to be used in a wise way and in a sustainable way so that they go on.
Yeah, and that's what you were saying to me in an email, that this isn't supposed to be, you're not anti-fisherman, you're not anti-recreation, nothing like that. It's just that you were saying you want these fish to be around so that there can be continued recreational and commercial fishing. We want these fish, we want the sharks to last, we want these fish to last, right? We want this marine life to last. So if there's overfishing, it's not going to be there, right? This resource isn't going to be there.
Exactly. There's 7 billion people, there's more than 7 billion people on the earth, and so we use a lot of different things, and so this is it's an example of us using something in a way that's not going to be sustainable if it continues on. And with that many people wanting to use that many different things, then we've got to make some changes. And in fact, it's the law of the U.S. that our fisheries are are managed in a sustainable way, all of the fisheries, so that the populations aren't declining.
So if this change was just recently made, that
Yeah.
the body that takes care of the mako shark population said they are now being overfished.
Yes, it's an international body.
Okay.
These sharks range all over the place. The sharks that we tracked went through the waters of 27 different countries.
Wow.
So it's not a population that can be managed by one country. It takes a lot of international cooperation. So yeah, it's coming out this fall, but that's going to be their assessment, is that the populations are being overfished, and then the question is what kind of steps are they going to take to reduce that fishing. And well, these sharks are caught in commercial fisheries, longliners, gill netters, and they're also very popular in recreational fisheries because they're good to eat.
Yeah. So so then I guess what happens next? We wait for regulation. What do you foresee? In your opinion, I think what happens next?
I'm not really sure what's going to happen. You know, these get caught on long lines where they're trying to catch tuna and swordfish, and they're worth just as much as those fish, so they don't let them go, they keep them. But they have a high survival on the long lines. There's a lot of them that are alive that they could let go, and so I think that's one big step. You know, the amount of mako sharks that are caught in commercial fisheries is probably huge compared to recreational fisheries. So that's probably where you've got to make the biggest change. But if they made it so they couldn't keep those sharks and they had to let them go, that would probably make a huge difference.
Okay. Where we stand now from the research that you've done, and now this governing body is making the statement that they are being overfished, do you feel like mako sharks are in jeopardy, or they are in danger?
No, they're not in danger, they're in jeopardy. It's just the trajectory of the population. It's going down, so if it continues, then they're going to become more and more scarce. It's going to be harder and harder to catch them, which is something that you don't want.
Yeah, no kidding. As we move forward, you are going to continue doing research. Part of what you do, especially for the study, you started back in 2004, continuing your research. You tagged the sharks. I'm just curious, because these sharks then get caught, and you're following them. What is it like for you to then see the sharks get caught and then, you know, they're dead, right? They end up on shore. What is that like for you as a researcher? Do you have to just detach yourself from the animal? I mean, is it kind of like, oh, there goes another one? I mean, what is that like for you? I feel like that would be difficult.
It's disappointing.
Yeah.
You know, these transmitters cost a couple $1,000s. It's a lot of effort to go out and catch the sharks. We spend a lot of time and effort.
A couple $1,000s.
Doing that. And so the idea is that the sharks out there swimming around for years, and we're finding out the boundaries of the population, what kind of fisheries they're interacting with, what countries' waters they're in, and a lot of information that's useful for managing their population. So some of these, you know, they're out there for a month and then they're dead. And so we get the transmitter back and we find out who the fisherman was that caught them and those kind of things. But yeah, it's disappointing, and it interferes with the research that we're trying to do. But in this case, we were able to use those numbers, the high numbers of the ones that got caught, to really enact some meaningful and substantial change in how the populations are being managed. And if they weren't caught and killed like that, then we wouldn't have been able to do that, I suppose.
Yeah, so and worked out in a certain way. I guess so. I guess your research has helped in that regard. I think that would be very difficult to be getting the transmitters back, and in some cases, I'm sure you didn't get them all back, right?
We got most of them back. There were some in Cuba and Mexico and some places that are a little harder to get them back.
Yeah,
but
no
in the U.S. and Canada, we were able to get them back.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So as you move forward, so appreciate this information, but as you move forward, you're starting a program at the University of Rhode Island that you're trying to get students hands-on experience working with sharks in a research program. Can you tell me a little bit about this?
Yes, there was a boat that was recently donated to the university for that program. So the idea is to have, especially during the summer, maybe during the fall as well, until it gets to be too cold, to be able to take undergraduates at the University of Rhode Island, mostly marine biology majors, but people that are interested in that, and have them out fishing, and also some students, high school students with diverse backgrounds that never experienced anything like that, and take them out and, instead of reading about it or watching shows on Shark Week, then they'll be out there on the boats, and we're going to do surveys of the local Rhode Island waters and see what sharks are there, and they can catch the sharks and handle the sharks and tag them and get first-hand experience doing that, which, as you can imagine, is very popular. A lot of students are interested in that, and I think there's going to be people from all over that come to URI just for that. Once it gets up and going, that it's going to be that popular.
I think that is absolutely incredible, and URI already has such an outstanding marine biology program. So to add that just gives it one more thing, and to bring in more people to go to URI, having that program. And I think to add the opportunity for high school kids, just getting hands-on experience, I think, with any career field, my goodness. So you're looking for some funding, so we'll put a link to fundraiser if people are interested in making a donation in the name of shark research. What opportunities do people have if they're interested in donating or maybe looking for funding in that regard?
There's the website that you're mentioning, or a link to the website where they can donate money to the university. They specify for shark research or for me, then that money would go towards that program. I think that it can all be done online, or they can do it more in person. And it's pretty straightforward. I think you click on a link, it tells you how to donate money and
perfect.
Who to specify it towards, so it's very straightforward.
Simple as that. If you're interested in continuing shark research, I think there's so much that we don't know about these creatures, and so people like yourself helping us figure it out, right?
It's one of the nice things about sharks. They get a lot of attention, but they don't get as much money as other things, tuna and swordfish and some other commercially important fish. So there's a lot of information that's been gathered since I've been studying sharks. There's a lot more known about them, but there's still a lot of information that we just don't have any idea what's going on.
And so you're helping us figure that out, and we appreciate that. So Brad Wetherbee from the University of Rhode Island, we really appreciate you joining us today. Continue to keep it up and keep us informed. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much for joining us.